Well, this is exciting. Thank you so much for having us, Shipyard, Brand Innovators. Great to be in Columbus. It's the first time here, and I will definitely be back as now I have a new friend.
We're friends.
Now we're
Yeah.
friends.
So
We're talking about brand love, and it's already happening. So super exciting. We got a third person?
thank
Oh,
you.
oh my God. Yes, yes. Amazing. Thank you. Great. Well, so I will kick this off. Let me get my notes. So, would love to hear a bit about your background and you've had a dynamic career trajectory. Tell us a bit about your journey here and some of the stuff that you're working on at Francesca's.
Okay, cool. Well, I've been at Francesca's about 2 years now, and prior to that, I was at Justice for tween retail for a few years. But before that, I spent most of my career on the agency side, actually at Resource, so a women-owned independent agency here in Columbus. And through that job, I got the opportunity to live in Chicago and San Francisco and work on not just retail. So Pink was one of my biggest accounts, but I also worked on things like Tidy Cat's Litter and Kingsford Charcoal. And so I think that the biggest thing that I learned and that I've taken on the brand side was those agency roots in being customer obsessed. That was what Nancy Kramer and those amazing leaders and women really taught us, in those values of being really understanding your customer, putting them at the center, and then how you really connect what your brand why and purpose, what everyone's been talking about today, and the product, and where those things overlap. And so I grew up understanding that. And I think the coolest thing is it doesn't matter what industry, whether it's cat litter or women's lingerie or tween girl clothing, they all have that in common, and I have carried that through with me. I think the biggest KPI that matters, and I also learned this in my growing up through the agency side, I think, is trust and trust. If you do not have trust, you'd have nothing. And that is so critical in today's world, too. I know they were talking about in Hot Pockets, just like the internet, and having to know who your brand story is, but also allowing the customers to mold that. And so if you are true to that and true to yourself in those relationships with your customers and every interaction along the way, that's where that trust is being created. And so that's what I've really learned through my career and I'm trying to bring into Francesca's. I think Francesca's is a really unique story. I live here in Columbus, but Francesca's is headquartered in Houston, Texas. So I travel every month. And
Those miles.
Yeah, lots of miles. I'm like the highest on United you can be. But they were a really interesting brand. They started as one boutique in Texas, all about curation and lots of different products, kind of like a treasure hunt, if you will, and have really grown. But I joined the company right when they went private equity. So they had gone through a bankruptcy as a real estate strategy, and we're bringing in new leaders and really looking for people that could help build a brand. And so when I got there was not a lot there at the beginning in terms of marketing and how we were going to build brand love. So we really started from the beginning of understanding who is Francesca's, and we can talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. I think we can talk more about your journey starting at Francesca's, and
Sure.
I'd love to jump into some of the cool partnerships as well. But
Yeah.
I'll
Maybe
follow
I'll
your
just
lead.
give a little bit of background.
Sure.
But I think we were just, talking today about Francesca's actually means free one. That's the definition of the name. And so talking about origin story and your history and being this one boutique, that's really where I started with the team when I got there. How do we use that and also understand the customer? And so we started by saying, who are we and how do we define free one? And then how does that relate to this 20-something customer we have, which is such an interesting time in your life as a woman. And I think you're always discovering who you are, but this idea of discovery and being free to figure out who you are and free to make those choices and free to try new things and express yourself and your individuality through your clothes, that's really what we've been trying to cultivate at Francesca's. And so it's been exciting to watch. And I think I heard someone earlier say the importance of marketing cross-functionally to all departments is that what we've been doing is taking that idea, listening to the customer, understanding what we have to offer as a product that is unique in the space, and changing the product. And so that's what we're just now starting, like the product delivery cycle of making those changes. It's been 2 years. And what's exciting now is that we pride ourselves on 2-week drops of small collections, but so there's a scarcity model built into that. You're also never gonna really find something that someone else has. And I think that really comes back to listening to our customer, understanding the why, and then changing the product to match that. So that is where marketing is really having this massive impact, and I think that's really critical, and it takes time to do that, but I'll be excited to tell you that we today found out that Beyonce is making all of her or asking all of her concert goers to wear Chrome. The team is hustling right now to get a Chrome story in the window and pulling everything we have so that we have a beat edit. And understanding who our customer is, where she is in her journey, has been really fun.
I mean, it has to be so challenging, right? Like, we've never been in a faster-paced world.
It's wild.
You have to move at the speed of culture to keep up with, especially the demographic that you mentioned, 17 to 30. I don't even know if I remember that far back, but I'm sure it wasn't that fast, and we didn't have as many platforms, and I can't even keep up with half the platforms. I think it's great how you've been able to sort of tap into that and continually evolve to hit what you mentioned is the center of your customer.
Yeah.
Love
and
to
what's really cool, and Gina, you and I were just talking about
Yes.
this. So Francesca's is 93% women, a corporation, and we have 3,200 associates in the field. Well, they're our customer. And so that listening to them as well has been awesome, and working with them and what they see and how they're interacting and how that is making an impact on the marketing decisions and the product has been really exciting.
Yeah, I mean, it's a brilliant, it's to use the people that are so invested, that are working. I say this all the time, even as a sales leader, right? Like, you need to be the brand ambassador. If someone's going to buy anything from you, if it's an accessory or it's a shirt or it's data and curation, hashtag Audigent, they have to think.
We're going to get there.
Yeah, no, but you have to think it's the coolest thing in the world, right? Like, whether you're selling ad tech or you're selling accessories or clothing, and I think having that ambassadorship and love for the brand, as we're still talking about love, is super important. I'd love to talk a bit about partnerships. I think in our very short and close best friendship that has happened over the last 3 days, it's really important, though, to build those relationships and work. You mentioned trust, work with people that you trust, your agency partners and some of your vendors. Talk to me a bit about how does that play into building really long-standing partnerships, but also doing really cool and creative executions?
Yeah. Okay, so I have always thought about my brands that I work with as a human, as a person. So who is Francesca's, and what does she do, and how does she talk and walk? And that really has gotten us to an archetype. And the same when I was at Justice, And so if I think about the brand as a human and a person, because that's how we need to engage with people and the customer, then I always, when I think about partnerships, have thought about okay, well, who would be at an interesting dinner conversation? Like, if we were having a dinner party, what other brands or partners or creators would we work with, right, that would align to our product why, and would make for a really interesting party that then people would want to join. So that's kind of like my filter. And then I think of partnerships in 3 ways. And I'm sure there's many more, but this is kind of how I've built from the different places. When I was at Justice, there was this great awareness there, right? There was already this, the brand was everywhere until they got sold to Walmart, which was very sad. But the love of that tween girl, we literally called it the nag factor. Mom was the purchaser, girl was, she wanted to wear the product, but didn't have the pocketbook. And so this idea of the nag factor was born. And there, we didn't, from a partnership standpoint, we wanted to create the community. So one of the things we did is we really understood our why, coming back to that, and we created events and experiences because we had that awareness, right? And so we created events and experiences that our customer want to be a part of. For example, we built a property called the Live Justice Awards, which was this idea that ordinary girls are doing extraordinary things, and we need to award those. And so we started as a small show, like an event, and we had creators, and then we identified individual girls in the space through who we knew, and we put on award show. So there were famous kind of like influencers in the tween space, if you will, because that is a huge market. And they were the performers, and then they gave the awards to the young girls doing amazing things. Came back to our purpose. The tune-in was wild. We had an event in real life, but then we also, streamed it socially. And so then the next year, what that did is it invited other partners in. So we were able to create something in the position that we had as a brand that could then bring people in. So that next year we landed Lego and we landed Columbia Records. We ended up launching a girl group and creating original music. And that then created another revenue stream for Justice because we were taking that brand love, which is back to who we were, and then able to create product off of it. So the Live Justice Awards became its own IP, and so on and so forth. So that's one aspect. The other aspect is really different in the role that I am in now, because our awareness was gone. It wasn't there. People would remember the brand Francesca's. Oh, I used to shop there. I know the jewelry. But we weren't top of mind. And so that's what we've been doing over the last time. And so I have to go out actively and seek brands first before I could build a community, which is where we're going to talk about some first-party data. But that was a really different approach. So we started small because we had to. Houston Rodeo was actually one of our first partners. They are massive. If you've never been to the Houston Rodeo, it's amazing. It's a 30-day event. There is music every night. Huge performers. I got to see Gwen Stefani live. It was amazing. And we knew that our customer was there, right? She's Southern. She wears a boho style. We know the product is there. We do Western wear really well. And so I paid to get into the rodeo, and we did a pop-up boutique for a week, and it was the #1 boutique in the nation every day that it was open. So we had to go about it different than when my brand was in a different position, right? Where everybody knew who Justice was. There was already that built-in love. We needed to take it a step further. In this position, it's different. And so now I'm really hoping that we're in this place and we're starting to get the phone calls. Whereas before, that wasn't happening. So I've always thought about partnerships in those two ways. And then lastly, and this is where I think it gets really exciting, is ambassadors and creators. And this idea that I talk to my team about all the time, which is there's riches in the niches. And so if we can think like that and work with creators and ambassadors at a micro scale in local areas where we know we have best boutiques. So for us, Disney Springs is the #1 boutique for the brand. And why is that? It's because she is prioritizing discovery, and she's prioritizing travel, and she's prioritizing music and going to concerts. And so because we know that about our customer, and we've changed the product to make sure that we have something for everything she's going to, then you can line up your real estate strategy as such. And so having ambassadors in those cities has been so impactful for us that we are working on expanding the program. It delivered actually last year a 9x ROAS in terms of a program that had anywhere from 30 to 60 ambassadors in it at a time. And so to me, when I think of partnerships, that is you obviously working with other brands to create that community or build that or expand it. But I think that is absolutely where everything is going.
That's brilliant. And I love the story, and I loved it, we had our prep call. I almost jumped through the Zoom and hugged you because I just loved every single one of these stories because it's just such an amazing way to tie things together. And
but it's And no matter who your brand is, and I think you, Dave, were saying it like the best, if you find those people, right, and it takes time for a brand, then they really can light your brand on fire. But it's coming back to trust at the very core of it, and knowing who your customer is and making sure that that relationship doesn't break. And if it breaks, I think someone said it earlier, Hot Pockets, if it breaks, you have to own it and like own up to it. And I think being transparent in the space then helps you gain those riches in the niches.
I love that. I love that line. So
Yeah.
good. Hashtag riches.
Oh,
and
I
niches.
didn't come up with it.
Yeah.
I think I work with an amazing team of girls, and they were the ones that figured that out.
Amazing. I love that. Let's talk a bit about some of your data strategy. Particularly around how you're massing all of these, loyal French. Is there words? Are Francescans, or is there like a?
It's the Fran Club.
The Fran
actually.
Club. That's right. The Fran Club.
You can be in it, Gina.
I will. I'd love
Anybody
to
can be in it.
I will,
It's inclusive.
I will sign up and give you all. You can have my data. But how are you guys looking to utilize the power of your Fran Club in terms of addressability and reaching those customers that you spoke of before, but also reaching new customers?
Yeah. So we launched the Fran Club, the loyalty program, like any loyalty program. As you buy, you get rewards, and then so like every dollar spent is a reward. And so it works online and in boutique. But what we wanted to do is make sure we were ready for the program when it launched, that we had everything set up so that we could capture that first party data. The brand we did not have that prior, except for, our POS. So we've been through this really awesome evolution. And so I think we just launched that actually right before holiday this past year, which for a retail brand of our size, not having a program is surprising. But it's been pretty awesome. And I think it was strategic in the way that we set out that roadmap to make sure that we were ready to capture that and that there was a reason. So we started obviously with the transactional piece of it, but then the idea really came about of, well, what is the Fran Club and how does this tie back to who the brand is and how can we really showcase that? Because what we know is if she's in the program, her customer lifetime value significantly increases. She shops actually 3 times as much as an average shopper, and she shops, her AOV increases as well. So getting her into the program, is really critical. And then we have the data to then remarket to her, talk to her, give her special rewards and offers, all those things that, most retailers do. But I think what's cool is that we've combined that with what we're doing with the product and this idea of understanding the customer and how much she's an occasion shopper. And so we created the Fran Club. And so we're actually physically putting on events in these markets, and we are inviting creators and ambassadors. And then Fran Club members who are our top tier get a special invite. And then we also have, it's like a press opportunity. And so we're really celebrating that. And then we were talking a little bit about creative. We have also then, kind of for efficiency's sake, taken those events and turned them not only to an event for the members and for the creators to create that extra content, but then we're filming them. And then we're turning them into CTV spots and spots in social. So we're really expressing what's happening. And we've seen a significant increase in our membership. And so I think the next step really is how we get the associates in the field involved in this. And so that's where we're going. Yeah.
It's brilliant. I mean, I think one of the hardest things, and I see this in my jobs as CRO and CFO, you have to always think about everything that we do gets tied back to a dollar. And look, it's the same thing as Audigent is a brand, and Francesca's is a brand. You have to put your CMO hat on and your CFO hat. How do you guys look at that in terms of all of these really cool creative executions, soul driving to the filling the funnel to the bottom of the funnel to then those loyalists, the Fran loyalists at the bottom?
Well, I think that's been the key, right? But we now that we have that, I can measure everything. I can quantify everything. If I can get her to make a purchase through the top of the funnel, right, and get her interested in the brand, and we're utilizing what we're doing in the space with understanding what's going on in her life. If anybody has a travel partner, I'd love one, because travel is the number one thing that this demo loves, and then concerts.
It's me. Okay.
And because we know that, she's shopping for that all the time. And it's getting, I mean, this next generation, right? Like, they can't even save enough money right now to put a down payment on a home. So why are they spending money on, things like trips and clothes? I mean, it's crazy. And so, but how can we do that? And we have a value proposition as well, in terms of like, you can come in there and you can find something every time for whatever it is that you're going on in your life. So she's definitely an occasion shopper for us. And so we're building our creative and we're building our brand love experiences with her at the center. And then understanding how the product connects to that has been so important. And then from there, being able to measure the transactions. And so being able to say, if we can do those things, then we can get her into the Fran Club. So it is a building progression to plan for. But now we can measure all of that through the loyalty program and how that's coming around. And I think the ambassador program too as well. You look at traditional paid media and how that's running, and if you're a CFO, you can see on the line exactly, you can measure every click, you can see how that's performing, and we certainly run that. But what took a trust and took a sell-in was that the content that those ambassadors were creating was actually performing better, generating more revenue, and then also giving us a content bucket that we internally could not fill, right? Because that's where a lot of the costs come into play from a marketing standpoint. You have to constantly have content. You constantly have to have content for every platform. Well, how do you do it? And so that's been a huge win for us. And as a marketer, being able to speak to the bottom line, that's moving the business.
We can't get away from it,
Yeah.
Unfortunately. Talk to me about what's something, future-facing that you're really excited about?
So I think what's really cool, and this is there would be two things, sneak peek. We are working now, I mentioned that we have our best advocates for our brand are the associates that work in the store. And they're amazing and incredible, and their ideas are fantastic, and they are at the front lines of talking to the customer all the time. We started to see in my team, and my team brought it to me and saying, everyone in the field wants to make social content. Okay, awesome. So we started local social accounts, and those are hard, right? Because they're hard to gain following. If you're not running paid, then you don't gain a following. But there's value there, and so we used that content on the master channels. But what we were finding was when we really dug into what that was, is that we could incentivize them. So we are working now on a really unique way to expand the ambassador program by offering an affiliate platform for our associates so that they are creating content, but also earning in addition. And we can really, I think there's some exciting things to come in that realm.
That's super exciting. Mm-hmm. Are we good on time? We're close. Are we going over? Nope. Steve, close.
This is the close.
The close. Okay. Last question then, or yes. Okay.
You're not over.
I'm not over. Thank you. Okay. Oh, okay. Great.
Maybe some questions.
That would, we can absolutely open up to questions. I think we've gotten a great understanding of all the amazing work you've done over the last 2 years at Francesca's. Super exciting. Awesome to meet another amazing female in the space, but also to take your expertise and really build something out of nothing. And so I'm very excited to see the future of the brand. And great to know you.
Yeah,
and thank you guys for having me. And let's open it up to some questions.
It was really interesting to hear you refer to trust as a key KPI. I think there's a lot more talk about that. The Edelman Trust Barometer has really raised our awareness of it. So I'm curious about how you measure. Do you, and if you do, how do you measure trust as that KPI to track it?
That's really hard. I think that's something more that we, I learned from some great, amazing leaders in my career that is really the bullseye. I think where we're starting to measure that and look at that is rolling out the mission, vision, values, and and who the brand is and the why across all departments in the organization. Because every single touch point is that the customer interacts with, their trust can either be gained or lost. And it's taking time. I mean, I can even speak to the fact that like we've recently had, we'll have some challenges in the shipping warehouse. We do everything out of Houston, Texas. If something gets backed up, then a customer gets upset. They go on, to the customer care center or social. So I can measure right now when it's not there. And by doing that, right, they show up in social or they get, there's an interaction. I can see when the trust starts to decline so that we can identify the areas that need work. So right now, like one of the things that we're doing is making sure that our engagement in terms of how we're talking to getting back to customers on social and opening that dialogue and making sure that we have resources internally to manage that and speak to that. So I don't have a direct answer for you exactly in terms of that, but I think that we're making strides by making sure that we understand where there's challenges with the customer and how can we set the organization up so that we can fix those and have that open dialogue with them. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Traci. This has been so interesting. My question is, given that you're reaching such an occasion shopper and someone who's really looking for that special discovery, how are you engaging consumers both online and offline, and what does that balance look like?
So we still primarily, I mean, we're a heavy stores business still, and we have opportunity and room to grow in digital. And so there's a lot of investment being made currently in the digital experience and the MarTech, and I would say we have a ways to go, but we've made a lot of progress. I think the way in which it comes back to the product. And so that's what's been really fun is like looking ahead and understanding and looking at trend. So we're trend focused at a better price. Understanding trend, and then where that aligns to what's happening culturally. So like I can tell you that, I mean, and this was an impact everyone had, but Francesca's, we actually saw a 30% lift in sales in our stores and online the week before Taylor Swift showed up. So I really have a shopper that is going, like, it doesn't matter what it is. If it's a bachelorette party, we have so much of that. All these life moments where she's really discovering things. Travel is huge for us. And so we're actually making an impact on the product and changing the product based on listening to what's happening in the social space. So that's really where this idea of social and digital connect. And I think knowing who we are and what we have to offer and really focusing in those areas and then being able to deliver up product is how we're navigating that. Yeah.
Wonderful. All right.
So I personally really love shopping at Francesca's, and after being away at school for a little bit, I was able to stop into a store and notice that you guys started a new line, Frankie, which I believe is targeted towards like 8 to 14-year-olds.
Yeah.
So I was curious how you're kind of marketing and promoting that, as that's not typically, your demographic or necessarily on social media.
No, that's good. I think the company saw, love that you love the brand, hit me up, I've got some jewelry. There was an opportunity, there was a white space opportunity, honestly. When Justice went into Walmart, there is not a lot for that tween demographic. And so we saw that and we felt like we had a platform, right? We have the stores, we have everything that we need to launch that. And so the strategy originally started as like takedowns so that the product was actually like Francesca's, but for tween girls. And we learned a lot. It didn't work. She's different and she wants something different. And so we've been listening to the customer, and actually next week, we'll be unveiling a new branding of Frankie, given all the learnings, and we are going to segment it out. We found that inside Francesca's, there was enough goodness there that we knew we were onto something, but we took all those lessons learned, and now we are really dedicating it to her. She needs her own space. So it was a test and learn, and I think that was really intentional in the organization. So exciting things to come for Frankie, because that tween girl is awesome.